It was Canada Day north of the border, and SGA was celebrating in style, agreeing to a new Supermax contract, 4-year extension worth $285 million. The extension kicking in 27-28, and the salary breakdown is absolutely absurd. Averages out to over $71 million per season. That's $212K per day, almost $6 million per month. Just incredible numbers. But Ryan, I mean, by doing the deal right now, he actually left some money on the table. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, he did, Bill. If he waited for a year from now, he could have signed a 5-year, $380 million extension, about $76 million a year. So it's good to be OKC. It's good to be Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. The reality of this situation is if he continues playing at this level in the Bill, or even close to it, he's not going to get to the end of his contract. He still had 2 years left on his current deal. So teams have different priorities in free agency. OKC, coming off of 68 wins in an NBA championship, their priority was clear: to retain their group, bring their best players back, and obviously that starts with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander signing the biggest contract in NBA history.
So what's the situation with Jalen Williams now and Chet Holmgren?
They're both extension eligible, two of the top players from the 2022 draft class. They have time to get that done in OKC. You have until the season starts in October. So I would expect both of those guys to get max extensions. We'll see if they give anything back to help the team out. We know what a special group they built there in OKC, coming off the championship with such a young core. But for me, that's pretty easy. I think it's a no-brainer to give them both near maxes. And Sam Presti and company have done a brilliant job structuring their books to give themselves flexibility starting next season when they need to pay those two guys.
Yeah, listen, I think if you're OKC, you've got to be thrilled with the fact that you've been able to lock up your core, or will be able to. When you think of that trio, it really begins and ends with them. The MVP, more than deserving of what he's gotten from them thus far. But this is a nucleus that right now they're thinking dynasty. I mean, they have the potential to be that, because the reality is their best basketball is still ahead of them. And so because of the flexibility and the job that Sam Presti's done with structuring these contracts and the way things are staggered, this team is going to be formidable for many years to come.
Now, the problem, I agree with you, GA. The problem is a lot of teams have gotten better this offseason. A lot of teams. And so it's easy to say and look on paper and say, oh, they've got one championship under their belt. They're going to be here for the memorable future. But there's a ton of teams that want to answer that bell as well. Denver Nuggets, Los Angeles Clippers, Minnesota Timberwolves. I can keep going on in the Western Conference. Houston Rockets. Come on now. It's going to be a real serious force in the Western Conference.
All right, you mentioned the Denver Nuggets, so let's focus in on them because they made some major upgrades this offseason. You got Cam Johnson from Michael Porter Jr., they added Bruce Brown, Jonas Valanciunas, and Tim Hardaway.
They got shooting galore. They got a guy in Cam Johnson who can move well without the ball, one of the best who does that. You got Bruce Brown trying to bring in a guy who was on that championship team for a few years ago. You know what he can do on the defensive end. And they're just, you can make the case that they're probably a deeper team that they've been probably since they've been considered a championship contending team. So kudos to the Denver Nuggets.
Yeah, but making that trade for Michael Porter Jr., they saved some money there too, right?
They gain about $17 million a year in additional flexibility, which helped to make those other moves. And I'm really impressed with the Nuggets' new front office, what they've done in a short period of time. Because the question around the league was, are they going to have to dump Michael Porter Jr.'s salary just to gain more flexibility? Or can they upgrade their roster? Well, Greg, they did both things with one move by bringing in Cameron Johnson. Chris mentioned the fit. I really like the way he looks out there with Jokic's ability to shoot off the move, his defensive ability, and that additional flexibility let them build out what I think was one of the most top-heavy rosters in the league.
And the other aspect of that, you heard Chris talk about the shooting. They've improved in that capacity, but also defensively. That was still the Achilles heel of this group this past season. They've improved in those areas. They've gotten some more toughness there as well, and I think that bodes well to Chris's point of them getting right back. Remember, this is a team that took OKC to a 7th game, but for injuries, we might be singing a different tune right now.
When you look at Jonas Valanciunas, you got to think he is the best backup Nikola Jokic has had in his prime, really bolstering that bench.
Yeah, listen, he's a very good basketball player, and it does give them a luxury. I think one of the issues were usage level of Jokic. You want to figure out a way to not have to be so reliant on his greatness that they didn't have the luxury of using him really as a decoy much of the time. And so having a guy like Valanciunas who gives you some toughness, really good in the pick and roll game. He improved as a 3-point shooter as well. I think this does bode well for a Nuggets team that wants to get back to the promised land.
Yeah, I think the Nuggets, if you look at the numbers in the bill, they're among the best teams in the NBA when Nikola Jokic plays. His plus minus, all the advanced numbers are historically good. They're among the worst teams in the league when he's either injured or on the bench or in foul trouble. Denver really struggles to score. So I like the moves. They didn't spend a ton of money to do it either. I think they're going to stay right under that first apron. So this is a team that their top 5 or 6 was as good as any, I think, in the West, but they really got hurt when they went to the bench. I think they'll be a lot better prepared. David Allen will have a lot more options this year when he goes to the bench. And if those guys could just hold the fort, Jokic and the starters are good enough, they should win a lot of games in the Western Conference.
If I had the nitpick of what the Nuggets have done, if I had to, paint protection. There's no rim protection really right there. So that's the only thing. You're going to have to rely on your perimeter players to really get the job done. You really can't funnel the opponent to the paint. You really don't have nobody on the weak side that can make that up. So I'm interested to see how that's going to play out.
Well, the Denver Nuggets, again, just a great story so far in this offseason. Duncan Robinson, speaking of great stories, just in Miami in general, his career going undrafted to what he became. He is on the move. We got more transactions and reactions coming up after the break. Summer League out in Las Vegas beginning July 10th to 20th. You can see it on NBA TV and ESPN. See the young stars like Cooper Flagg, Dylan Harper as they get their first taste of NBA action. All right, we got a sign and trade with Duncan Robinson heading to the Pistons. Why I'm breaking down for us here.
Yeah, Simone Fontecchio, as you see there, he was on an expiring contract, makes $8.3 million this year. So the Detroit Pistons are getting creative. They've lost some of their depth off the magical team they had last year. They were the most improved team in the league by a significant margin. Tim Hardaway Jr. is gone. He's in Denver. Dennis Schroeder is gone. He's in Sacramento. And obviously the swirl around Malik Beasley and the gambling allegations. So Detroit had to regroup on the fly. They added Karis LeVert to a 2-year, $29 million deal. And this is creative. I think the shooting additions last year were really key for them. Opened up some space for Cade Cunningham and company to operate in the paint. And they get one of the best shooters in the league and Duncan Robinson to help space the floor.
How do you like the fit?
Listen, they definitely needed shooting. The one thing about the Beasley deal is you got the shooting plus really good point attack defense. Like he was a really good on-ball defender. So they're going to lose some in that capacity, but a lot of it was taken out of their control, right? And so to be able to go out and make the moves they made short notice, I think you'd have to say it's a win for Detroit, a team that is definitely ascending in that Eastern Conference.
All right, the Raptors and Jakob Poeltl agreeing to a 4-year, $104 million extension. When you heard that news, what was your reaction?
Well, listen, he's got a history there. Jakob Poeltl is a good basketball player. Again, this is a guy that he's good with the pick and roll, a really good rebounder, can give you some rim protection. So he's going to be solid. I think he'll be complementary to that new nucleus that they have in Toronto. The question, though, is when you look at what they've done salary-wise, are they going to be able to actually be a team that's not just battling for the play-in? That's what's going to be interesting to watch with the Raptors here this upcoming season.
Yeah, and the direction is also interesting, too. No Masai Ujiri there. Is there any news regarding the presidency in the Raptors?
As of right now, no. What I can say, over the last couple of months, I was hearing that Masai probably was going to step down. So that's what a lot of my peers, that's something that we were looking into leading up to the offseason. So to find him going out that way was definitely surprising. But as of right now, there's no news on that front.
All right, that's on the Raptors front. Other notable free agents who agreed to deals, and one we were talking about earlier in the day, and you were breaking this, Dennis Schroeder, that 3-year, $45 million deal with the Sacramento Kings.
Yes, so I can report 2 years is fully guaranteed. That third year is a small partial, I'm told. So the Sacramento Kings can really get creative after they can consider it an aspiring deal after this season. So really good. This was a position of dire need. They needed a point guard. Sabonis went on record and saying a point guard was necessary, so they went and got one.
Gershon Yabusele, 2 years, $12 million deal with the New York Knicks. I feel like he's going to fit in with that culture in New York.
He will, and he's going to be a fan favorite, too. The thing about him is he's a guy that understands how to play the game. He can space and knock down a triple. He's really crafty. He's not going to overwhelm you with his athletic ability, but he's savvy. He understands angles. And I thought he was a breath of fresh air for the Sixers. Really, I love this signing for the New York Knicks.
What about Trey Mann in Charlotte? What are the Hornets doing there?
Yeah, so the Hornets initially declined the qualifying offer on Trey Mann, would have been about $7 million. And then when teams do that, Nabil, usually they move on from the player. But I think Charlotte did that to have potential flexibility. We know they've made some other moves. We also know in the draft they added a couple shooters, Con Knippel from Duke and Liam McNeely from UConn. But they like Trey Mann. They gave him the 3-year, $24 million deal. You see it on the screen there. So Charlotte, going through a full-blown rebuild, I think they'll continue to take chances on young players, give them an opportunity, and see who pans out, who are keepers for the long term, and who they have to move on from.
Yeah, definitely building for the future there in Charlotte. So plenty of names off the board, but still more notable players left on the table. Who is next? Who's the next big chip to fall as free agency continues in the NBA? Could it be that guy right there, Jonathan Kuminga? The Memphis Grizzlies announcing that Jaren Jackson Jr. will undergo a procedure on a turf toe injury on his right foot that he suffered during a live basketball run off-site. He's expected to make a full recovery, and there's no timeline just yet for his return. Chris, you were reporting this. I mean, just terrible timing, obviously, for the Memphis Grizzlies.
Yeah, right after sign, 5 years, $240 million extension? Yeah, timing not well. But what I can say about turf toe injuries is that, there are different grades. Typically, grade 1 and a grade 2 turf injury doesn't require surgery. It requires rest and some treatment. But a grade 3 turf toe injury, that typically requires surgery. And I would assume that's at least what he has, since he will be getting a surgical procedure. And if it's a grade 3, usually that's around a 6-month mark as far as recovery. But again, I don't have the information or details of the extent of his injury, but yeah, definitely not good timing.
Yeah, hopefully for the Memphis Grizzlies and his injury history with that team, he's okay and ready to go. Hopefully when the season does start. Hey, some more notable free agents still left on the board. And Ryan, this is interesting because the RFAs, there's some big-time names there.
A lot of restricted free agents might get squeezed in this market and build. There's not a lot of money left in the marketplace. You see 3 of them there, Jonathan Kuminga, Josh Giddey, and Quentin Grimes. At this point, they're really reliant on their current team to be fair to them. We'll see if those teams are fair. If the teams use leverage, they have it right now. They can squeeze those guys and basically dare them to sign the qualifying offer. As a reminder, if they sign the qualifying offer, they're going to be unrestricted free agents next year in the bill, but they're just on a 1-year contract, not making a lot of money. So generally, players don't want to do that, and their agents don't want to do that because of the risk. What if a player gets injured, or what if he just doesn't play that well and leaves a lot of money in the form of a potential extension on the table?
When you look at that list right there, do you got any beats on any of those players?
Well, Chris Paul, he was a guy who has received some interest from teams. The Milwaukee Bucks have registered interest in him. Charlotte Hornets, they try to make a play on Chris Paul as well, but I'm told he wants to stay closer to home. The Los Angeles Clippers, Phoenix Suns, they are still in play. Russell Westbrook, I thought he would end up in Sacramento, but the Kings were unable to unload Malik Monk. And so Westbrook, I'm told, is unlikely to end up in Sacramento. So I'm interested in seeing what's going to happen with him.
Listen, the restricted guys, it's always a challenge. The teams have the leverage now, but if they don't sign, they lose that leverage if they're on that roster to start the season.
All right, so we'll keep tabs on that. By the way, Commissioner's Cup championship game in the WNBA. Congratulations to the Indiana Fever for the first time in franchise history, taking home the cup. And they did it without Caitlin Clark, but best of all, $500K, gentlemen. $500K, that's a nice little bonus right there. So congratulations to the Indiana Fever.